a perspective, we're going to go through and talk a couple of do a couple different areas of cloud models. Talk about some uses of the cloud, recommendations, and then how cStor can help with you and help you do this and get to the cloud, as well as some Q&A at the end. So from a cloud model, the first one I want to talk a little bit about is a public cloud. I think everybody's probably familiar with public cloud, but we're going to go through a couple of things. We feel at cStor that it's great for new applications. If you're going to be spinning up something new, rather than starting off with acquiring hardware and software and putting it all inside your own data center, the availability of just spinning up a server in the cloud is very attractive from a time to deployment and such. You only pay for the resources that you consume. So if you're not using it, you're not paying for it. You don't have to buy it all up front. This also leads to an OpEx model, which avoids hefty purchases to get started. From a server and a storage and a network, buying all that up front to be able to provide the services, just paying for it as you consume it in an operational expense model. You get immediate access to resources and additional resources if you need to increase or decrease. Having the public cloud model is really advantageous from that perspective, where there's no time to acquire. And then hosted, so there's no more hardware management or refresh cycles. You kind of pass that off to the provider at that point, where they'll do the standard refreshes as gear gets older, and there's no more walking through the data center looking for amber lights or whatever it might be. All that management of that hardware is passed on to somebody else. And that kind of leads to why even build a data center anymore, right? If you're going to start from scratch, starting that new, would you start putting up walls around a data center, or would you rely on the cloud to build it there? Moving on to the next model is a private cloud model. Now, this is the next logical step behind virtualization. And what I mean by that is, after you have everything virtualized, what can you now do and enable? And what's so attractive in that cloud model from a public perspective that you can bring those attributes inside your four walls of your data center? It really starts off with building a service catalog of offerings. What do you want to present to the end consumer that will give them the ability to grab infrastructure, grab servers, whatever it might be? So rather than opening it up to whatever they want, it's much more advantageous for you to come up with some standard offerings and advertise that out, that people can consume them or go to you to get them consumed. And then an orchestration layer to actually make that happen, right? So that's kind of the beauty of the public cloud. All that's done for you. There's an orchestration layer that you just kind of click, and you say next, and this is what I want, and magic happens in the background. You suddenly have a server. That same type of acquisition of services can be done internally with orchestration around your virtualization, what you have, and hopefully integrated with the service catalog. This allows for things like chargeback or showback, so you can actually see how much resources individuals or groups, maybe it's a department, that are consuming of your infrastructure, and you can show them or you can charge them. Different models depending upon the different types of businesses, I think, that go after it. This can be done on-premise, as I kind of have been talking about, or you could actually do the same thing in a co-location. If you're not going to go to the construction phase of building the four walls of a data center, you can simply share the physical capacity of a co-location and put these same resources in there and do the same things. That way it's kind of off-site, and other people can manage the hardware, the cooling, and the heating, cooling, and space. And then you can just maintain your applications and your servers at that point. A private cloud does give you dedicated resources, at least to your business, right? It's still shared amongst all the applications, but compared to the public cloud that multiple different organizations are sharing the same hardware resources, the private cloud gets them dedicated to you and your business. And then this is definitely a self-managed model, right? You own the servers, you manage them, you refresh them, you acquire them. The next model in between there is the hybrid cloud. Hybrid is probably most specific to your needs as far as where you're going to go, what you want, and when you want it. I'll talk about that a little bit with the next points with the integration into your current environment. This is really taking your existing, be it a private cloud, and then extending it into the public cloud for additional resources, or where more of the resources are needed. It's very, very common to have a requirement of the same hypervisor both on-premise as well as in the cloud. So if you're using Hyper-V, you're going to want to have it in both. If you're using VMware, you're going to want to have it in both. and then you're connecting your hybrid cloud, your public portion of your cloud, to your local portion, hopefully with a layer 2 that makes it the most easiest, with a layer 2 network spanning between the two. But there's many different ways you could do it with a VPN and such, but there's a lot of effort that goes into that actual physical connection between the two. And then on-premise to support the normal workload. This is a model that we've seen and people like, where you buy the infrastructure to support your normal workload and then burst to the cloud. So if you have kind of a cyclical pattern of consuming resources like month-end, year-end, around the holidays, Christmas, a lot of maybe commerce going on the sites where you need a whole lot more resources. If you're doing it on-site and only in a private cloud, you have to buy all the physical resources you need to hit the maximum capacity at the month ends and around Christmas time potentially, compared to if you do the hybrid model. You can say, you know what, I'm going to buy what I need and I maintain, and then when I need more resources, I'll just burst things out into the cloud. So it kind of allows you to buy less, buy for your norm, and then burst to the cloud. Kind of a neat way of looking at the hybrid cloud. Some other options for cloud we've seen being very popular: cloud for backup. A couple of comments around that is integration with your existing hardware is an option at this point. So let's say you could have native storage replication from your storage system that's in your own on-premise data center, and then if you can maintain the same protocols and extension of your system to replicate it up to the cloud, you can maintain deduplication and compression and those types of things that are value add for your on-site storage and extend it into the cloud if you maintain that same hardware into the cloud for backups, and then definitely maintaining the efficiencies. The same can be looked at from a software perspective, simple extension of your existing system and into the cloud, and what I really see most often there is your backup software. Right, your backup software is your engine for your backups, and it says back up the system and move the data here and keep it for that long. Just having another step in there saying, hey, keep it for this long on site, and then go ahead and ship it off to the cloud at that. So then your backup software manages your cloud connection. Kind of a really simple way of utilizing cloud for backup. This really maintains all the efficiencies from the backup software. You're not adding any layers on top to be able to manage it. It's simply just extending your backup software to talk to contents in the cloud. This can help to reduce or even eliminate tape, where you would typically back up to tape and send it off-site. Now you simply just extend your backup routine to hit a cloud library, which is getting your off-site, and you may not need to have any tape. There might still be some uses for tape for long-term retention. A lot of HIPAA requirements have like 100-year life of the patient type stuff where you probably would be using some form of deep storage or tape at that point. And then an optional to have a local cache device on-prem and have that caching device access your cloud. So the benefit there would be you would have the backups going to a local device, and the backup software doesn't know or care know that it's off-site. It just sees this other capacity local to you, and then you can push the capacity there, your backups to that, and then it manages the cloud interface and does all the fun compression, deduplication, and then performance efficiencies as well up to the cloud. And that's all for the backup. And typically what follows a backup is a restore. So that's a definite topic for today, the restores from the cloud, right? So offsite data is typically immediately available for restore, which is great if you're restoring small files or an OOPS or even maybe a mailbox where they're always available. If you have tape that goes offsite, you have to recall the tape, and there's human intervention, and there's maybe a truck that's got to haul it back. If you're backing it up to the cloud, that data is always available for a restore. It's there, it's still visible, and you can pull it back. And that's great for small restores, but as we get into the large restores or potentially a complete disaster, that could be a limiting factor as to how long it would take to restore an infrastructure with your bandwidth via the cloud. Right? That's really your internet bandwidth to your data center that you're going to pull back a lot of data. And if we're thinking if that's a terabyte of data, you can do the math and figure out I'm not going to get a terabyte back in a day or a couple days depending upon my bandwidth. It might not be the best scenario for a true disaster. However, with that being said, a lot of cloud providers have an option for a restore to the cloud. So in there, restore to the cloud can definitely help that. You have immediate access to a new infrastructure in the cloud, so even if you back it up there, then you can acquire resources from that cloud provider to do restore of your servers into the cloud and then bring that application online in the cloud versus back on-prem. If, I mean, heaven forbid, something like an airplane hit a building and took out a data center, right? You'd have to figure out where you're going to go. You'd have to acquire the hardware. You'd have to start doing restores. All that, you could just say, you know what, I'm just going to bring it up in the cloud. Kind of like my point earlier, you know, why build a data center anymore if you can just use the cloud for that? So it's an option. It's a cool option. Hopefully nobody ever uses it, but it's out there if it's needed. Then there's DR to the cloud, kind of a different perspective than just backup. I mean, I kind of incorporated the disaster recovery with the restore to the cloud, but there's more readily accessible and almost a business continuance model that you can use with the cloud. And this is offering virtual machine level protection to the cloud. Here, each individual VM can be replicated to the cloud and kind of waiting there to be turned on versus having to do a complete restore. There's options for doing protection groups to handle machines with dependencies. For instance, if you have a web server connected to a backend data server that you want all the database server to all these to be restored at the same time, you put all of them into a protection group and you back them up and recover them at the same granularity. So you can say, boom, I want this entire application set to be brought up in the cloud in the event that there's a disaster, or even as the next bullet says, to test restores. I can take my backup to the cloud, disaster recovery to the cloud, business continues to the cloud, and actually say, you know what, I want to do a test recovery, and I want to bring that server in the cloud online. Absolutely can be done without disruption to the local site. So it'll be in a fenced-off environment, right? There'll be IP conflicts and everything else, but this will bring it up in a fenced-off location, so there's no communications back, there's no disruption. But you can bring it up and say, oh yeah, I can start the database, right? I might not have everybody connecting to it, but you can verify that you can do the recovery in the cloud. So you can test restores, and that won't affect your protection. The DR is still going on, nor will it affect your production, because it's a completely off-site, different copy of everything that you can verify with. Kind of a cool thing to do from a VM level. There's some pretty cool things that allow you to even do similar hypervisors. Could be, VMware on-prem and be replicating out to a cloud-based Hyper-V or vice versa. And this can even lead to potential data migration from different hypervisors using the same type of methodology, because it does handle the replacement of all the tools and everything else associated with the hypervisor and the integration there. It's kind of a cool option. DR, very, very popular. There's definitely a lot of options in this environment and realm, be it with the native hypervisor, with external tools, software solutions, but it's something that kind of gets you more than just a backup to the cloud and actually gets you true DR with SLAs that are, in the 1 minute or sub 1 minute type environments. Then after DR, we can also talk about unstructured data. And this is an interesting one for us. Most cloud offerings are focused on virtualization and virtualized environments, not so much file shares and unstructured data. So unstructured data is going to be anything that's just kind of all dumped into NFS shares, CIF shares, that people have access to data. And I believe that there's a pretty big need for geographically dispersed file share data, right? If you only have one site, it's pretty simple, right? You could put it all into a VM and just serve that data, or maybe your storage will do it natively. But if you have multiple data centers or multiple users around the world, how can you leverage cloud to make it a better environment for all the file shares and the unstructured data? And how can you take advantage of the cloud provider's high bandwidth? Right, so they might have a presence in Europe with high bandwidth that you might be serving from the US or something like that, where you have all these constraints about latency and such. So how do we leverage this cloud infrastructure and get the best for the end users? With options to cache data locally, right? So even if you have a small office somewhere, you can put a caching device and it connects up to that unstructured data, and it gives those users the look and feel of having the data local to them, even though it's all stored up in the cloud, and it's also managed from one location in the cloud, even though it's dispersed around the world potentially. These on-site, on-prem caching devices offer a secure and encrypted access to that data, so it's not like you're exposing it to everybody. And then it also incorporates a geographical dispersed file locking system. So This is kind of neat that if you have issues that you don't know who's going to be opening up that same file, so you only have one copy, so you know that not two people can edit the same thing. A lot of these unstructured data cloud providers or the access of that data in the cloud will include a locking system so that you don't have the contingency of having multiple people accessing the same section of a file. So some pretty cool stuff, developments a couple of years ago in that environment that we've seen some very good success with some of our customers. And then just talking about the different cloud providers. Slide saying they're not all alike. So a couple of broad areas. You see some of the large established providers. I could name several names in this environment. They kind of have standard offerings for you to pick from. And the gist of it is you have to subscribe to their ways, right? They have it set up, they own it, and they tell you how it's going to be used. Then you can get into some of the other extreme, I guess, the smaller boutique providers that it's almost like the cloud provider down the street from you, right, where they'll do a lot of things and help you and incorporate the way you need and specific to your needs. So completely different approach. Those are the kind of guys that are saying, what can I do to better serve you, versus the big guys are saying, here's what you got, use it, I can provide you very cost-effective ways of doing it. Both are awesome. It all depends upon what you're trying to get out of the cloud. Different cloud providers have different applications as well as protocols that they support. If you're going to be using it for backups, for DR, for replicating specific hypervisors, you're going to want to make sure that the cloud provider you're looking at is going to be for your specific needs of applications and protocols. They also have very different performance characteristics. Some of them will be very, very slow access, but it's guaranteed to be there and kind of a backup routine, and other ones will be hey, run your database server from us, we're fast. There's validated designs. Specifically, applications will say, we're supported with different cloud providers. Definitely a major impact for you picking your cloud provider, making sure that they do support the applications that are very, very specific to your needs. And then the different ones have different guarantees, uptimes and SLAs, and what happens if there is a downtime. Do they have multiple data centers that the data is guaranteed to be in multiple data centers so that you'll always have available access even in the event of a data center outage. And then another topic around there is who owns the risk. As you sign the dotted lines with a cloud provider, there's usually a statement in there saying that the provider has zero risk of losing your data, kind of saying, hey, trust us with it and you can't sue us if something happens. There are a couple cloud providers out there that will assume some of that risk and they'll put guarantees behind it. So they're kind of investing with you in that. And that's a big differentiator that you don't see very often, but something we can definitely talk more about. So what are our recommendations? My first one that I'm going to say is, cloud is a complete buzzword, which has different meanings to different people. So just because there's a directive to go to the cloud doesn't really define much at all, if anything, right? Cloud could be local, it could be remote. It's really, I think it's a step beyond virtualization with orchestration for access to your infrastructure. But everybody will define cloud in a different way, and cloud by itself pretty much means nothing. Projects can get lost in the uniqueness of cloud. As you start a project and you say, hey, I want to move it to the cloud, you typically go to a cloud provider and see what they have, and it kind of morphs your project potentially into something different. So really maintaining, hey, what are my business drivers for going to the cloud? Do I want to gain efficiency either in process? Do I want time to deployment? I need to bring up servers really quickly. Infrastructure constraints. Do I have issues with space, power, and cooling on site? Do I want to incorporate new technologies or leverage new technologies that I can easily access via the cloud or cloud technologies? Do I want additional functionality or just hardware management costs, right? Do I spend too much time and I don't want to have the burden of managing my hardware? I'd rather pass that off to somebody else and I'll just manage the applications, and that's what really matters to the business. So along those lines, how can cStor help? Well, I think our unique approach is what really is going to start down that line, where we want to understand your business requirements and partner with you to provide the best solution possible, right, and really solve business needs versus just saying, hey, I got another server up in the cloud. So we have partnerships with various cloud providers. I haven't mentioned many today, but it's really from the very largest down to those boutique customers, the boutique cloud providers, and what requirements does each customer client have and what's the best match for them. So partnering with us to help you figure out what does our cloud offering, what should it look like when we're done. And then we have other partners with complementary offerings to the cloud, making the transition smoother. And what I mean by that is, I talked a little bit about that DR to the cloud with different software that can replicate VMs. We're talking about backup to the cloud. So we have partners that have integrated backup devices, caching locally. So what more can we add to get better efficiencies to the cloud? Maybe it's something as simple as, deduping and compressing before we put it in the cloud to save some money on the capacity consumed in the cloud. Also making it faster because we have that local cache. Financing. So financing with cloud is completely different than buying an infrastructure. Typically, it's an OpEx model. It's different. It's changed. You don't see the hardware refresh models in the future. So how can we best make this look from a financial perspective to meet your company's requirements? And really what that is, are you cool with just going to an OpEx model? Have you budgeted differently? Is it going to be harder to do monthly purchases versus an annual or a 3-year? How can we make this look and feel easiest to you so that you can get to the goals that you have for the business and either being cloud in the public, private, or hybrid? And then my last statement out there, cloud is coming, right? Where it is today and where it was several years ago, vastly different. And then how can we help you get the most of it, right? It's around the corner. It's out there. There's no hiding from it. And then it's really just trying to figure out how do we utilize it best. So with that, I think we can open it up for questions. We have just a couple minutes before our wrap-up slides. So Kim, I don't know if you can help us with what's out there.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Pete. Great presentation, great insight. We do have one question. Before I get to that, I'll just remind everyone, if you have questions about today's presentation, you can go ahead and still post them to the questions pane in your control panel, and we'll get those answered if we have time. We do have one question here. From your experience, what do you feel are the biggest challenges with customers moving to the cloud?
Yeah, that's a broad one. If we think about people going to the cloud, I kind of mentioned this a little bit in the slide deck. I think companies decide that they want to move to the cloud before they figure out what they want to move to, right? So it's kind of a decision made, yes, we're going to incorporate cloud, and then we have to figure out with you or find out what the business needs from. Is it going to be, on-prem, off-prem, internal? Is it going to be for backup, DR? I mean, and then it gets down to budgeting, right? If you go for, all in with every possible option, usually cost is a major factor. Or if you just back up to the cloud and try to eliminate, tape, that's usually an easy one to justify. So I think the biggest challenge, just to kind of summarize that, is really knowing what you're trying to get out of the cloud after you even start going to the cloud, right? Usually it's reversed. You don't have a good idea as to where you're going. So helping customers with that. And then I guess that's overall, I think one of the biggest issues we've seen is probably dependencies with other applications or other servers or services running on-prem if you're going to an off-prem model. So really understanding, the scope of the project, what's moving, and what dependencies are out there. Probably be my elongated answer to the question there.
Excellent, thank you. At this time, we don't have other